we've got lots of upcycling. Let's get started. Today's first upcycling project involves turning a wooden stand, possibly used for plants, into a basic stool. To begin with, I'm going to measure the legs and make them slightly shorter so they're going to be more of a better length to sit on. After measuring, I'm going to use my jigsaw to cut the legs and ensure that they're all the same length. I was really excited when I had a friend show up with this plant stand because I visioned a stool right away. I'm also going to save those ends that I've cut off because I can put those to use in another project. The paint on this stand almost feels like it might have been enamel based. I probably could have used a paint stripper, but I felt like I wanted to spend a whole bunch of time sanding today. So I put on my 80 grit sandpaper and went to work, and it took a lot of sanding, but I love the results. I see stools like this with really high price tags at high-end stores, so I'm really excited that I'm able to recreate this from a thrift store find for a fraction of the price. To achieve a weathered and aged appearance, I'm going to be using a variety of different tools, such as a chain, hammer, putty knife, some pliers to distress that wooden surface. By intentionally adding these dings and dents and worn corners, I'm aiming to create a farmhouse-like aesthetic that suggests that the piece has been around for over a century. I'm also going to use my utility knife to cut chunks out of the wood here. And while this process may not be for the faint of heart, I assure you the end result's going to be worth it. Once I achieved all of that desired texture, I'm going to go over the wood with an 80 grit sander to smoothen out all those notches, chunks, and preserve that aged look. After completing all the sanding, it's time to apply some wax for that finishing touch. Now here's a little twist. I'm going to use some of my leftover shoe polish from another project as the top coat for this stool. I have some black and clear shoe polish, and I'm going to mix them together to create a shade that's not overly dark. I'm going to apply that shoe wax, and it's going to provide a durable, permanent finish on this stool. As I rub it in, all the wax is going to seep into those notches and dings, and it's going to accentuate them, adding that even more to that aged look. It's the perfect final touch. And if you don't have shoe polish, don't worry, you can use your regular finishing wax to achieve the same results. Personally, I'm absolutely in love with how it turned out. This stool is finding a special place in my kitchen, right where it belongs. I'm rummaging through my junk drawer in search of 4 old doorknobs. I have this wonderful idea to repurpose them along with a piece of salvaged wood into a fun DIY coat rack. Interestingly, these doorknobs were given to me by a friend who knew I could create something beautiful with them. So here's my take on it. To start, I'm sanding down that salvaged wood using a 120 grit sandpaper to remove all of that outdated varnish. I always ask my friends to save unique items instead of throwing them away. They know I love upcycling and transforming discarded items into something beautiful, and it's my way of reducing waste and avoiding filling up landfills. Instead of burning or wasting these items, I'm giving them a new life and purpose. Did you know you can create a cost-effective wood stain by just mixing instant coffee with hot water? It's a simple solution that works wonders for staining your DIY projects. Try it out and you might be amazed by the results. To attach the doorknobs to the piece of wood, I'm going to be using a product called JB Weld Steel Stick. It's a putty that you mix together, and once it hardens, it provides a secure bond. I also have double-ended screws that are going to fit perfectly into the doorknobs. Here's how it works. I'm going to quickly mold that steel stick, ensuring it's a consistent color, and blend it in and mixed well. Then you're going to insert it into the bottom opening on that doorknob. After that, I'll place the screw into the putty, and as it dries, the putty will act like cement, permanently fixing that screw to the doorknob. And this is going to allow us to securely attach those doorknobs to that salvaged piece of wood. night, I enlisted the help of my husband because, well, let's just say patience and I aren't best friends, especially when it comes to measurements. With his guidance, we marked the 4 spots where each doorknob was going to be placed on the wood, and then I made a small test pilot hole to ensure that it was going to screw in easy. Now, all that's left is to screw in those doorknobs and attach them securely to the wood. Before proceeding, I let these doorknobs sit overnight to make sure that they were dry fully before we screwed them in. Important to remember that everything in this project was obtained for free. The salvage wood was discovered in a pile of discarded pieces, and the doorknobs were generously given to me by a friend. These doorknobs are truly stunning with their unique weathering and patina. I'm grateful that I can bring these materials together and transform what would otherwise have been waste into something truly beautiful. This coat rack is headed to my cabin. It's going to be a perfect addition, and it's going to complement that decor wonderfully. This poor old little step stool or step ladder is in really rough shape. It's kind of crooked. The legs have kind of been bent a little bit, but I have a fantastic idea of how to upcycle this. I'm going to take everything apart and give it a really good cleaning. Scrape all the loose paint off of it, give it a little sanding, and see if I can straighten up the legs a little bit. I'm not sure if I can, but look at that beautiful red paint that's on the bottom of this. I'm going to try to recreate that red, and I had this red in my cabinet and it matched pretty good. So I'm going to paint all of those wooden steps with the red paint. For the frame of this step ladder, I had this turquoise blue spray paint, which I absolutely love. I think it's going to look beautiful with the red, so I gave everything a really good coat of the blue. Everything's completely dry, and we're going to put it all back together. And here's how I upcycled it. A beautiful spot to keep some of my potted plants. Finding lamps at the thrift store is pretty easy, but many of them look really outdated. Still, I love getting them at a great price and giving them a fresh new look through upcycling. I recently found this plain lamp and I wanted to transform it into a natural boho piece. To kickstart the process, I started masking off the cord and the light bulb area. Buying secondhand items from the thrift store is not only a great way to live sustainably, but it also reduces the demand for new products, saving resources and energy used in manufacturing. It's like giving the environment a high five while finding cool stuff. I finished masking off everything and I'm super excited about the baking soda paint I've mixed up. It has this amazing texture that resembles ceramic or stone. All you have to do is dab it on up and down to create that extra texture. Once the first coat of baking soda paint had completely dried, I wasn't quite satisfied with that stark white color. So I grabbed my acrylic paint and I found a gorgeous off-white shade. Just like before, I'm dabbing it on. The best part, that since we have that textured baking soda paint underneath, the acrylic paint also takes on that textured look. After applying one full coat, I decided to add some coffee grounds for even more texture. I simply dabbed the dry coffee grounds from the leftover coffee this morning that I let dry into the wet acrylic paint. It gives a subtle aged appearance that I'm aiming for with this piece. Remember to dab up and down to maintain that desired texture using this painting technique. Once everything had completely dried, I need to seal it up with a water-based polyacrylic sealer just to add that extra protection. Now it's time to shift our focus to the lampshade and make it equally as fabulous. I have a whole stash of ribbons and I picked one that matches a lampshade beautifully. With my handy hot glue gun, I'm simply attaching it along the base of the lampshade. It creates a really nice ruffled look that instantly elevates this lamp. It's amazing how a little paint and a touch of ribbon can transform an old lamp into something fabulous. Next time you visit the thrift store, make a beeline to the lamp section. Take a peek and see if there's anything waiting to be upcycled. Trust me, it's a breeze and you can quickly update a lamp to match your style or your home decor without breaking the bank. Why spend on something new when you can give new life to an old treasure? This upcycling project is an absolute delight and anyone can do it. Give it a shot and enjoy the satisfaction of creating something unique and fabulous from the thrift store. Thrift store frames are everywhere and they come in all sorts of styles. Here's a super easy way to upcycle them. Find a frame that has a really ornate design. Then get creative, print your own picture or use a page from a book or a magazine. Pop it into the frame and boom, you have instant art. I did this myself with a map I sell on Etsy. I printed it out, crinkled it up, added some coffee stain for that old vintage look, and it's so simple yet it turns out so amazing. You can totally do this and have your own unique artwork in no time. Coffee staining paper is a breeze. It transforms a plain white image into something vintage, unique, and full of character. Here's how. Mix instant coffee with warm water and spread it all over your print or design. And then grab a heat gun to dry it, giving that old, aged appearance. It's simple and a fun way to add a touch of nostalgia to your artwork. Give it a try and watch your creations come to life with a charming vintage vibe. After giving the glass a really good cleaning, I'm ready to complete this. Simply add the map to the frame, put the back on, and voila, you've created a stunning artwork using beautiful thrift store frames at a fraction of the cost compared to buying them from a department store. I found the frame didn't even need it to be painted. I love the gold and the dark wood colors, and the map complements it perfectly. This successful upcycle proves that you don't have to look far to find treasures. Next time you spot a frame at the thrift store, go ahead and give a project like this a try. I found this gem in the thrift store while browsing through the vases and the flower pot section. I absolutely love the unique appearance of it, and I always recommend rummaging through that area because you can discover some incredible pieces to enhance your home decor. Transforming this was a breeze. I just added a touch of black spray paint and it completely revamped it. I think it would be perfect holding a cookbook in the kitchen and making it a stylish display. Another item I often come across in the kitchen area of the thrift stores is rolling pins, and all you need to upcycle these is some acrylic paint. Once you paint the handles and place them in a crock on your counter in your kitchen, they look fantastic. But you don't have to worry, the food's not going to come in contact with the painted handles, and we're also going to seal these up with some polyacrylic sealer to make them really durable. This not only adds a pop of color to your kitchen space, but it also is so incredibly easy to do. You'll always find rolling pins for really reasonable prices, and it's a DIY project that you can complete in an afternoon. Next time you visit the thrift store, keep an eye out for them. Grab some paint, an old pottery crock, and give this a try. It's a perfect way to display these rolling pins once they've completely dried. If you want, you can even grab some sandpaper and distress them, giving them a charming, well-loved look. I love the way it enhances the appearance of these rolling pins, and it always takes them to the next level, really effortlessly. Faux plants are always worth checking out at thrift stores. You've probably seen how pricey they can be at department stores. Some may seem a little bit tacky, so look for ones that are full, natural looking, and have really beautiful colors. I was thrilled when I found this ivy, and it was in a really cute little wicker basket. I think this one really resembles real ivy. It was a bit dusty and dirty. I took it to my kitchen sink and I gave it a good scrub with some soapy water, and after that I placed it outside on the deck and let it dry in the warm sun. If gardening isn't your strong suit, faux plants are a perfect match. Lately, I've been fortunate enough to come across some really stunning ones. I have some spots in my home that don't receive much sunlight, so I like to place the faux plants there. It saves me the trouble of buying real plants that wouldn't thrive due to the lack of sunlight. These faux beauties require no green thumb and always look vibrant. It's a hassle-free way solution to bring some greenery into your space. I really enjoy upcycling rolling pins. You can put them all together in a basket and they look absolutely beautiful. This one I'm going to give a real farmhouse twist to. Painted it with some chalk paint. I'm going to put a graphic on it using my Podge reverse graphic transfer method. Printed these graphics off on my LaserJet printer, reversing the text, added it to the rolling pin, let it sit for 24 hours, dampened it with some water, rubbed off the paper. We're going to be left with a beautiful graphic. And then I sealed it up with some polyacrylic sealer. Going to add a ribbon to the top and some embellishments. And we've created a beautiful piece of farmhouse decor for our kitchen with an upcycled rolling pin. I found this at the thrift store. It really needed a makeover. It certainly was a lot of work, but the end result was so worth it. The first thing that I did was I took out all of that cork out of the middle of the coasters. And then I took out these two little knobby things at the top, filled it up with some filler, and sanded it down when it was all dry. Took it outside, painted it all with some matte, flat, black spray paint, and then painted it with some white chalk paint. When everything was completely dry, I aggressively sanded it, gave it a really rustic feel, and then I printed off some graphics on my LaserJet printer, making sure to reverse the text. These graphics are available in my Etsy store. They're so much fun to turn into coasters. Use my Mod Podge, applied it to the graphic, put it down, let it sit for 24 hours, and then I dampened the paper and rubbed it all off. Sealed it up with some engine enamel. That makes it really durable, and I've created this really cute coaster set from the vintage one that was ugly and dated. Check out the Chippy paint on this old antique table leg. Isn't it beautiful? And I found these hooks in the scrap metal bin. I'm going to pull it all together and create a beautiful piece of home decor. I'm going to screw the hooks into the table leg, put some hooks on the back so we can hang it onto the wall, and I have created a simple, easy coat rack. What do you think? I found this old toolbox in the scrap metal bin and these brackets, and I knew how I could upcycle it. I saw the potential in it, so I brought it back to my shed and I started to upcycle it. I'm gonna mount these brackets on the bottom of the toolbox. I'm drilling a hole so I can just use a nut and bolt to attach it to the bottom of the toolbox. And when I have those done, I also drilled 2 holes in the bottom. In case it gets rain or it gets damp, the water will be able to run out and anything that I put in it won't get rusty. Also drilled 2 holes in the back. And this is how I upcycled it. It's gonna hold all of my garden tools outside of my garden shed. It's perfect, and I love the way that it upcycled. What do you think? Today's upcycle is a quick one. Always look for wooden bowls when I'm at the thrift store. I had this little piece of a spindle left over from another project. Just gonna glue it together, screw it with a little screw, and we've created a really cute little decor bowl. How easy is that? Hi, Deidre here from Our Upcycled Life, and today we are upcycling this broken chair. When I find a chair that's broken, I never get rid of it. I dismantle it because I know I can turn it into something really pretty. I took the back spindles and I cut them down to size and I glued them back into the back of that chair because we're going to use them as little hooks. I'm putting Vaseline all around the outside of the chair and painting over it with chalk paint because when you sand it down, it leaves a really chippy finish. I'm adding a graphic onto the seat using my Mod Podge reverse graphic transfer method. You let that paper in Mod Podge dry for 24 hours, dampen it with some water, rub off the paper, and you're left with a beautiful graphic on your project. I had these 2 spindles, love the color. I'm gonna nail them on the top and the bottom of this chair. And I think this is gonna look beautiful in a farmhouse kitchen. Broken chair, but I knew I could upcycle it, and I'm going to turn it into a beautiful wind chime. I had some eyelet screws that I picked up at the dollar store. I'm going to put them in the top of the spindles and then in the bottom of the back of the chair, and Before we put it all together, I'm going to paint all of those spindles lots of really fun, whimsical colors just using my acrylic paint. Because this is going to be out in the elements, I'm going to spray the spindles with some engine enamel, and I'm going to put some penetrating oil on the back of the chair. Put it all together, and we have made a really cute wind chime with a broken chair. What do you think? I've got a fun upcycle for you. I have this old dresser drawer and a broken teapot that's missing its lid, and I'm going to upcycle it. I wanted to make the drawer look old and crackled, so I put on some Elmer's glue, let it get tacky, and I put some chalk paint on top of it, and when it dries, it creates a beautiful crackle finish. Added a ring drawer pull, and I've masked off the inside of the teapot because we're going to take it outside and spray paint it with this beautiful yellow. I'm going to attach the teapot to the inside of this drawer with an old door handle, and I found this plaque at the thrift store. We're going to scrape off that greeting card that was decoupaged onto it and turn it into a beautiful sign for our birdhouse. I'm doing my Mod Podge reverse graphic transfer, dampening the paper after 24 hours, rubbing off the paper, and we're left with a beautiful graphic. I found this old rusty chain in my stash, going to use that to hang it up, and I have half of a spindle I'm going to use as a perch. What do you think? This piece of wood left over from another project that I did. I'm going to turn it into a really fun sign. I've painted it, distressed it, and I'm going to turn it into a garage sign. It's going to be a perfect gift for a dad or a grandpa or an uncle. I printed off these graphics on my LaserJet printer, making sure to reverse the text, and I'm using my Mod Podge mat. Let it sit for 24 hours, and then I dampened it with a rag and a little bit of water, and then I rub off all the paper, and I'm left with these graphics on the sign. I'm going to seal it up with some polyacrylic sealer after I get all of the paper rubbed off, and that's how easy you can turn a scrap piece of wood into a great sign. It's going to make a great gift. I'm going to upcycle this vase I picked up at a yard sale for $1. It still had the price tag on it, $29.99. Wasn't fussy about the green color. I took it outside and sprayed it with some primer, and then I let it dry completely, and then I brought it into my shed and I painted it with some sand paint. If you've never used sand paint, you need to give it a try. The texture that it creates is fantastic. I put on 2 coats, let it completely dry in between each coat, and you can see the graininess. It almost gives a stone finish on your projects. You can take any glass vase or glass jar and really update it with this sand paint recipe. When it was completely dry, I thought it needed a little bit of depth, so I'm dry brushing on some white chalk paint. Love the way that it turned out. What do you think? You won't want to miss what I'm going to do with this teapot and this candlestick holder. It turns out adorable. They were both already painted black, but I wanted them to be white, so I'm painting them with my homemade white chalk paint. I put on 2 coats, and then once they were dry, I took a baby wipe and I just rubbed the baby wipe into that chalk paint wherever it would have naturally aged. And if you don't have baby wipes, you can just use a damp rag. I'm going to put some graphics on it using my Mod Podge reverse graphic transfer method. I printed this graphic off on my LaserJet printer, and we're going to use the Mod Podge mat. I'm going to cover that piece of paper and then put it on my project exactly where I want it, making sure to get out all of the bubbles and all of the wrinkles. I set it aside. It's been 24 hours. I have a damp rag with some water, dampening the paper until you can start to see the graphics, and then we're rubbing it away. Now we're going to attach this using some E6000 and my glue gun. We're going to put it together. And this is what I created. Fill it up with some herbs. It's gorgeous. Want to see what I'm going to do with these pot lids? Stick around because it turns out fantastic. I had this old cupboard door, and I'm cutting it down to size that I need for the project, painting it with some white chalk paint, and then I'm sprinkling on some pickling salt. We're going to add some texture to this piece of wood. Let it dry. Now I'm painting on some red paint, going to sprinkle in some salt, let it dry, going to put on some turquoise paint, and then we're going to get our scraper out and scrape away. We're going to be left with a really rustic piece of wood, sealing it up with some polyacrylic sealer. And now we're going to add these pot lids. I am drilling a hole so we can attach it to the wood, and I'm gluing the screw into the back of the pot lid so when we put it on the piece of wood, we can still put the knobs back on. And who thought picking up these pot lids would turn into something so beautiful? A little rack to hang up utensils or tea towels in a primitive farmhouse kitchen. Okay, so I found this rusty box at a yard sale for 50 cents. I've got the end of these spindles, and I have some old CD labels. We're gonna use the paper underneath the labels, the shiny stuff. I've printed this off on my LaserJet printer on the shiny side of the paper. We're gonna add some graphics to this rusty box after I paint it with some homemade white chalk paint, and I'm just dry brushing it on just to give it a light coat. This process of transferring graphics, it will not work on an inkjet printer. You have to have a laserjet printer, but it is magical. I'm going to cut it down to size, and then we're going to get out our polyacrylic sealer. You want a water-based polyacrylic sealer. We're going to put a light coat where we want the graphic to be on the box. We're going to lay it right into it, press it down, get all the bubbles and wrinkles out, set it aside, and let it dry. When you peel that paper away, you've got a graphic. It might not be perfect. You might have a little few spots that don't transfer, but it is magical. Adding some feet, and this is what I created. Love the way that it turned out. An old boat oar at a yard sale. Its rowing days were over, but I knew I could upcycle it and turn it into something beautiful. I took some time and cleaned it all up, sanded it right down to the bare wood. I then had some penetrating oil and I gave it a really good coat over the entire oar. The penetrating oil really made the grain in the oar pop. I'm really loving the way that it's turning out so far. I got my painter's tape out because I'm going to do some painting on it. And because I put the penetrating oil on first, after I put the paint on, it's not going to adhere very well. So when I peel the tape off and I give it a sand, it's going to give it a real beach coastal vibe. I paid $1.50 for this, and it certainly was worth it. As you can see when I sanded it, how distressed it was. I'm going to put some hooks on it, and I've measured them out so I can have them evenly spaced across the handle. I'm going to screw them on. Love the way this turned out. It's going to look perfect in a cottage or a lake house or at the beach. I found this wooden bowl with a lid at the thrift store. I knew I needed to decoupage it. Painted it with some black chalk paint and then some white chalk paint just to make it look distressed. Love this napkin. I found it at HomeSense and it's gorgeous. I'm going to decoupage this little trinket dish in sections. I'm going to do the top and then every other panel. If I was to do this whole project all in one piece of a napkin, it would be a wrinkled mess. That's why I'm doing it in sections. That way I can control the little pieces that I'm putting on, and I can make sure there's no bubbles and wrinkles with a little bit of saran wrap, smoothing it out, and then sealing it with some polyacrylic sealer. It took a little bit of extra time just to do those sections, but it certainly was worth it in the end. And to clean up all these, I used a little bit of a fine sandpaper and then cleaned up the inside, touching up the black paint, sealed it all up with some engine enamel so it's really durable if I want to put some earrings and necklaces in. And it's all finished. I am a collector of junk. I'm never quite sure what I'm going to do with it. I set it aside until I find some inspiration. So you should check out what I did with this old piece of wood, a rusty rake, and a piece of old chippy painted baseboard. I put some penetrating oil on the piece of wood, and I'm going to seal up that chippy baseboard with some matte polyacrylic sealer. I'm going to put some glue on that piece of baseboard and then nail it onto that piece of wood. I always try to achieve this chippy paint look when I'm doing my painting techniques, so when I found this baseboard that was already chippy, I fell in love with it. I found this rusty latch and it worked perfect. I'm going to screw it onto that wood because my rake fits right into it. And this is what I created. What do you think? Let's do some upcycling. I had this old strainer. Let's turn it into a plant hanger. I'm going to drill 4 holes around the rim, and then I'm going to get out my dollar store twine and determine how long I want it to hang. And then I'm going to do a lark's head knot around that wooden ring and then tie the string onto the strainer. I had this little bit of a spindle. The patina is gorgeous on it. I drilled a hole and put some wire through it, and we're going to attach it to the bottom of the strainer. I never throw much out because I know at some point we ate something beautiful, and I've created a beautiful plant hanger for my porch. I'm going to show you a really cool way to decoupage with 2 different types of napkins. One's going to be on the inside and one's going to be on the outside. First thing you want to do is you want to make sure your napkins are only 1 ply. So if they're 3, take the bottom 2 off and just work with the top one that has the pattern on it. And then I'm going to cut it in a circle to fit around the outside of the bowl, just so it's a little bit bigger. Using my Mod Podge mat, I'm going to start from the middle and work my way down around the whole bowl, embracing some of those wrinkles because that's inevitable and it's going to happen. I've got the first napkin on, we're going to let it dry completely, and then I'm taking my sanding block and just sanding all around the edges. Here's the trick. You're going to put on a coat of white chalk paint. Let it dry completely, give it a little sanding to make it nice and smooth, and then get that second napkin. Cut it in a circle a little bit bigger than your bowl and do the same process. Start from the middle and then work your way down, applying Mod Podge around the whole bowl. We're going to seal it up with some polyacrylic sealer. How beautiful is this? I found this in a scrap wood pile and I knew I could turn it into a beautiful farmhouse-themed sign. I've sanded it right down to get that top finish off because it was really glossy, filled up the holes, and painted it with some of my black homemade chalk paint. I made these DIY silicone molds and I'm going to add one to my sign, taking my air dry clay, filling it up with that mold, and we're going to add an embellishment to the top of the sign. I'm going to set this aside, let it dry. We'll put our sign together tomorrow. I took my Gorilla Glue, glued that embellishment on. I'm painting it with my white homemade chalk paint, and then I'm going to dry brush a little bit of my black chalk paint on that embellishment. One last sanding, and we're going to turn this into a sign using my Mod Podge reverse graphic transfer method. Putting the Mod Podge on the paper that I printed on my LaserJet printer, let it sit for 24 hours, paper off with some water, and this is what I created. Picked up this framed canvas at the thrift store and it really needed an upcycle. I sanded it down so it was nice and smooth, put on a coat of black chalk paint so it sealed everything up, and then put a coat of white chalk paint on top of that. Now we have a blank canvas ready to create. I'm going to use these napkins. We're going to do two different techniques. I'm going to do a decoupage with a napkin, and then I'm going to do a graphic transfer in the middle. I've tore up all of these napkins to go around the inside of the frame, and I'm using some Mod Podge mat to apply them. When you're decoupaging like this, it looks better when you've got a torn edge and it just blends into your project better. And if you check at your local dollar store, there's always so many beautiful napkins to choose from. I printed off this graphic on my LaserJet printer and we're going to use our Mod Podge mat, making sure to reverse the text. I'm putting that graphic in the middle, let it sit for 24 hours. I've dampened it with a cloth, rubbed off all the paper. Now we're going to seal it up with some polyacrylic sealer. This is what I created. Found a piece of an old broken chair in the wood pile at the dump, brought it home. I'm going to turn it into a fantastic wooden sign. It was already painted black. I wanted to leave it that color, so I'm just sanding it down and distressing it. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to add some wax over that whole back of the chair. I had a piece of scrap wood that I cut for the back that we're going to fit in the middle, painting it with some black chalk paint and then some white chalk paint, putting a little bit of candle wax on too to give it a bit of a distressed look. It's going to fit right in the back of that chair. We are going to do our Mod Podge reverse graphic transfer method with this quote. I'm going to put the Mod Podge on my graphics that I printed on my LaserJet printer and then let it sit for 24 hours and then take some water, rub off the paper. We're going to be left with a beautiful graphic. I'm going to seal everything up with some polyacrylic sealer, nail it onto the back of that chair, and this is what I created from an old piece of a chair from the dump. This scrap piece of tongue and groove, and I'm going to turn it into a beautiful piece of farmhouse decor. I've cut off that piece of tongue and groove and I'm going to find the middle of the board, use my square, and draw a line across. Now I have this cutting board that I keep out in my work shed that I use as a template, and I'm going to trace it onto that piece of wood, and I'm going to be able to get two cutting boards out of this piece. And these sell really well right now, so if you have a booth or you sell online or you have an Etsy shop, give this a go. I'm going to cut both of these out with my jigsaw, drill a hole in the top, sand it really well, and they turned out fantastic. Now these are not food safe, they're only for decor, but they are beautiful when they're all finished up and they look perfect displayed in a kitchen. Found this wooden tray at the thrift store. We're gonna give it a makeover. I cleaned it up with some hot soapy water and now I'm painting it with some of my black homemade chalk paint. I put on 2 coats of that homemade black chalk paint, letting it completely dry in between each coat. Now I'm just taking my scraper and I'm scraping off the paint anywhere where it would have naturally aged. And I'm taking it down to the natural wood. I love using this scraper method when I don't want to bring out my sander and make a mess. And it's definitely an easy way to distress a piece and make it look authentic. I found this drawer liner at the dollar store. I'm going to line the inside of this tray with it. It's peel and stick and it's going to fit in there perfectly. Another successful upcycle. We're going to upcycle this thrift store stool. It's really dated with that heart, but I'm going to embrace it and I'm going to give it a little bit of a farmhouse twist. Painted it with some black chalk paint and now I'm putting on some candle wax. Anywhere you put candle wax, when you paint over top of it, the paint is not going to stick and it's going to leave a distressed finish. Waited for that coat to dry, then I put on the yellow, more candle wax, put on some white, and now we're ready to make it look really distressed and chippy. Taking my scraper, my sander, and just sanding it and being really aggressive anywhere that candle wax is, that paint from underneath is going to peek through. Putting on my Mod Podge reverse graphics using regular computer paper, printing on my LaserJet printer with a little bit of Mod Podge mat, applying it, letting it sit for 24 hours, dampening it with a rag, rubbing off the paper. Then we're going to seal it with some polyacrylic sealer. And this is my thrift store stool, upcycled with some farmhouse feels. A scrap piece of plywood that I didn't want to throw out, so I'm going to turn it into a farmhouse-themed sign. Printed off my graphics on my LaserJet printer, and then I applied some Mod Podge to those graphics and placed them on the piece of plywood where I wanted them to be. Once I had all the graphics measured and placed exactly where I wanted them and made sure they were nice and straight, I set the sign aside for 24 hours and let it dry completely. After 24 hours, I got a rag with a little bit of water on them and just dampened it till you can just start to see the graphics show through and rub off all of the paper. And once I'd rubbed off all of the paper, I sealed it up with some polyacrylic sealer, and I've created a beautiful farmhouse sign from some plywood. I found this vintage key holder, and I'm going to give it an upcycle. Took it outside, gave it a really good sanding, gave it a coat of spray paint, and then brought it back into my shed when it was dry and coated it with some homemade white chalk paint. It took a couple coats to get it covered completely, and then once it was dry, I took it back outside and gave it another sanding to make it rustic and chippy. This is the graphics that I'm going to use. I'm only going to use the word keys on the top, and I'm using my Mod Podge reverse graphic transfer technique. This graphic is available in my Etsy store if you want to try it out. I let it dry overnight, and now I dampened it with a cloth, and I'm rubbing off all the paper, and you're left with a wonderful graphic. And this is a great upcycle, so much better than the original. It's not dated anymore, and I absolutely love it. Not to mention, I won't be tearing out the couch cushions looking for my keys. Found this shelved at the thrift store, and this heart made it look a little bit dated. So I decided to take the heart off and use it for another project. I cut a piece of wood to fit between those two brackets and sized it up. Glued it, nailed it, and it's all ready to paint. Now this doesn't look so 90s. Put a coat of nice brown stain all over it and then painted it with some of my homemade chalk paint, and then I took it outside and distressed it with my sander to give it a really rustic look. I designed these graphics, and they're available in my Etsy store if you want to try them out, and I'm only going to use a portion of them to fit on that piece of wood that I put in between the brackets. I'm going to use my Mod Podge reverse graphic transfer technique on this, and I think it's going to look great in a farmhouse kitchen. What a great upcycle. It took an old dated shelf and made it look fantastic and chippy, and I love it. Out any scrap pieces of wood because everything can be turned into a little sign or a little ornament or something that you can sell and make some profit on. These are actually slats from a broken shutter. I deconstructed the shutter and I saved all of these, and I'm going to turn them into ornaments. I'm painting them all with my homemade chalk paint, and then I'm going to do my Mod Podge reverse graphic transfer method. You just print these off on your LaserJet printer, making sure to reverse the text and using some Mod Podge matte. There was a lot of slats in that wooden shutter, so I can make a lot of ornaments. I let the graphics sit for 24 hours, dampened it with water, and then rubbed off the paper, and we're left with these really pretty graphics on these wooden pieces. Drilling a hole in the top, adding a bead and twine, and we've created these really cute ornaments that sell really well. What do you think? Found this old Barndoor door in the scrap wood pile. I brought it home because I knew I could upcycle it into something beautiful again. I also picked up this plaque at the thrift store. It's seen better days, painted it with some black chalk paint, and then dried it with my heat gun to speed up the process. I had this piece of coffee stained paper that I printed on that I'm going to put in the middle with some Mod Podge. Just putting the Mod Podge on the back, we're going to decoupage that right onto the plaque. Now I'm going to attach it to that wooden plaque that we painted with the black chalk paint, set it aside and let it dry completely. When it's all dry, I'm going to seal it up with some polyacrylic sealer, and then I'm going to screw it onto that barnboard door. I love the farmhouse feels that this has, and I was so fortunate to find this piece of barnboard door. What do you think? I was thrilled to stumble upon a Lazy Susan at the thrift store, and it was priced at only $4.99, which is a fantastic deal. Even though it was in rough shape with scratches and a really ugly stain, I knew that with a little bit of work, I could restore its natural beauty. So the best part was it was constructed from solid wood, which made it really perfect for upcycling. I used a palm sander with a 120 grit piece of sandpaper to remove the varnish and the stain from that Lazy Susan. I also took it apart and sanded every part until it was smooth. These are really expensive to buy brand new, so I'm really happy that I found it and I can upcycle it and make it look brand new again. Now I'm going to teach you how to make your own DIY stain using instant coffee. All you need is some hot water, a quarter cup of it, and 2 heaping tablespoons of instant coffee. Mix it all up to create a beautiful DIY stain that's going to make the wood on that Lazy Susan really stand out. To apply the stain, just take a rag and wipe that coffee mixture all over that wood until it's completely covered. The end result is so stunning. All of that grain in that wood just pops and it really enhances it. Not all DIY projects have to be challenging or require upcycling. Sometimes you can just simply bring a piece into your home, give it a good cleaning, and use it as is, or incorporate it into your existing decor. In this case of the Lazy Susan, all it needed was a little bit of surface work, a fresh coat of stain, and a sealant to bring out all of that natural beauty. After applying the coffee stain and allowing it to dry completely, I sealed it up with a matte finish polyacrylic sealer. The end result is stunning, and I couldn't wait to display it in my home. I placed it on my dining room table, and I'm using it to hold a plant, a candle, and my salt and pepper shakers. It's a perfect addition to my decor, and I can't believe I scored it for only $4.99. I found this charming little rocking chair. It was dusty and dirty, just needed a good cleaning, and it was outdated looking, and it didn't fit into my decor. However, I knew with just a few easy tweaks, I could get a fresh new look and make it blend into my space. This piece had 3 parts, including this glass votive, and I don't think it was supposed to go together. I'm going to save that for a future project. I focused on the little gold vase instead, giving it a coat of matte black spray paint. Once it was dry, I added some moss and a beautiful faux succulent to create a completely new piece of decor. I placed it on the rocking chair that I cleaned and dusted, and I love the way that it turned out. So much better, and it doesn't look dated anymore. Now I have a beautiful and modern piece of decor that's completely transformed from that 1980s vibe. It's a true testament to the power of simple DIY tweaks to take something old and make it look new again. I found a really beautiful cutting board at the thrift store for $5.99, and cutting boards can be really expensive. Although it was still in really good shape, it had a few scratches and stains, and I knew I could bring it back to life easily and quickly. First, I removed the hanger from the top so it wouldn't get in the way, and then I used my palm sander with a 20 grit sandpaper to make it nice and smooth. I don't think it was ever sealed, so I'm going to use my butcher block oil to make it food safe. It's easy to use, and all you have to do is rub it on the wood with a rag, wait a couple hours. I like to put on a second coat, and it'll be as good as new, ready to use in your kitchen. Other products that you can use to seal a cutting board to make it food grade is mineral oil, or you can also use beeswax. These are commonly used to seal up cutting boards. It's important to avoid using regular cooking oils like vegetable or olive oil, as these can go rancid and potentially contaminate your food. Next upcycle is this vintage basket that I found at the thrift store for $3.49. While the teddy bears in the basket are incredibly cute, the overall design was just really outdated, screaming early 2000s. However, the basket itself is in great condition and it has so much potential. I decided to strip everything down to the basket so I could use it for a new project. And as for the teddy bears, I couldn't bear to throw them away, so they're going to be donated along with the fabric pieces to the local thrift store. And I'm sure they're going to bring joy to another little owner. Do you remember when we used to dot letters with paint back in the early 2000s? This little heart had that technique done on it, but it can be upcycled and made beautiful again. With just a simple cleaning and some faux greenery, this old basket looks perfect again. But that's not all. Let me show you what I did with this little wooden heart that was on the inside. After sanding it down to reveal that natural wood grain, I just left a touch of that original white paint for that charming whitewashed effect. I sealed it all with some polyacrylic sealer. Store finds don't have to be left behind just because they look dated. With a little bit of imagination, you can upcycle them into some beautiful home decor that's going to blend in with your modern decor. So don't overlook those secondhand treasures. They might just be that missing piece that you're looking to add to your home. We've all stumbled across these unappealing votive, or I think they're called Tart candle warmers at the thrift store, yet there's always potential for them to become something much more beautiful. With just a quick and easy coat of spray paint, these dated finds can be instantly updated. In this case, it simply was just some matte spray paint that transformed this into a versatile and chic addition to any home style. From traditional granny chic to boho, it's amazing how just a small touch-up can breathe new life into a thrift store treasure. Upcycling has never been any simpler, and I recently picked up this wooden bowl and a candlestick holder at the thrift store. We're going to merge these two together into a single piece in an effortless way to upcycle. The secret? Just a dab of E6000 glue or any other powerful adhesive that's going to permanently fuse these items together. All you need to do is place the bowl on a flat surface and position the candlestick holder in the center and ensure that it's perfectly aligned. Let it dry. And voila, in no time, this upcycle can be transformed into a chic little catch-all for jewelry, a perfect addition for you to hold some keys, or maybe a stylish kitchen accessory to keep ingredients handy while you cook. Possibilities are endless, and this DIY project is both speedy and uncomplicated. Today I'm going to be upcycling this vintage jewelry box I picked up at Value Village for $9.99. I just find that it's really dated. It's kind of got that orange tinted stain on it, and the inside is all lined with that felt paper, and it's really stained and it's really dirty. I know I can upcycle it and make it pretty again. I always find these jewelry boxes at the thrift store, and whenever I see them, I always pick them up because they upcycle beautifully. I usually paint them, but I'm going to do a different twist on this one, and we're going to do some bleaching and try to lighten up this wood and just make it look like it's more modern. First job is to pull out all of this yucky material. These actually come out really easy. I just use a scraper and it's just lightly glued in there and you can just peel it away. It's a little bit of a job, but it's so worth it in the end. Sometimes you can save the inside of these jewelry boxes, but most of the time when I find them, they've been really well loved and they're usually really dirty. So I just like to take it right out. I don't usually see jewelry boxes this big, so when I saw this one with all the little drawers and the little slide out piece on the bottom, I knew I had to grab it. Now once we get all the big pieces of the paper out, it's a big mess here. Bear with me because it's worth it in the end. What you want to do is you want to spray it with a little bit of water because there's glue and paper that's going to be left in the bottom. And once you get it wet and let the water soak right through, you can scrape away that paper really easy, and then you have a nice clean drawer to work with. Okay, big job, but I got it all done. And now I'm just going to take a sanding block. This is just a 220 sanding block, and I'm going to clean out the inside wherever there was paper because you're going to have little bits and pieces here. And I'm also going to take off all of the hardware. There was lots of hinges and knobs. The knobs just pop out, and the hinges you just need a really tiny screwdriver. I have a little glass dish that I saved them all in because those screws are so small and I didn't want to lose any of them. Once I had all of those off, I'm taking my 220 sandpaper and I want to sand the whole thing until it takes off that top layer of varnish. Once we have that top layer of varnish off, when we apply the bleach, it will be able to penetrate into the wood. I've taken my spray bottle and I've mixed a solution of 50% bleach and 50% water. You want to make sure you do this in a well-ventilated area and you're not doing it somewhere where it's going to make a really big mess. I'm just doing it in my shed with the door open. You want to thoroughly soak that wood and let that bleach soak in, and it's going to lighten it as we let it sit and do its magic. Now it's already starting to work. This has been a couple hours and it is dried, and I'm just taking a sanding block again and just doing a light sanding, and then I'm going to spritz it again with that bleach and water mixture until I get the color of the wood that I'm looking for. And I'm just going to keep repeating this process, letting it completely dry in between until I like the color. And this took 3 applications of the bleach and water. Once I got the color that I was looking for, I rinsed it all really well in water to neutralize the bleach. I really like the color that I was able to pull from this. It almost has like a sun-bleached look. Now I want to line the bottoms of the drawers and the back of the jewelry box, and I found this beautiful scrapbooking paper at Michael's, and I picked it up, and that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to measure the drawers in the back and then cut the paper with my paper cutter. I've got them all cut out, and now I'm going to decoupage them on with my Mod Podge mat. You're just going to put a little bit in the bottom of each drawer and then just put the scrapbooking paper on top, and it'll adhere really well. And look how beautiful this looks. Now I have to come clean about what happened here. I put all of my hinges and my knobs in that little glass dish with a little bit of Javex and water, thinking I would only leave it for about 5 minutes and it would clean them all up. And I forgot about them, and this is the next day, and they had already started to go rusty. But actually, I don't mind it. I kind of like the look that it gave, and it gave it kind of that rusty, aged look. Everything is all put back together now. I've taken it out to my shed, and I'm going to give it a spray of this matte clear polyacrylic sealer, and I'm doing it on top of the paper too. I don't like using Mod Podge as a top coat. I like using the polyacrylic sealer. So here is the before. Remember the ugly orange paper that was really dirty and lined in all of those drawers, and that orange stain that I really don't like. And this is how I upcycled it. I love bleaching wood and the effect that it can give. Now, one thing I did find with these jewelry boxes is I realized they're not all made with the same type of wood throughout the jewelry box. So some of it lifted in different colors, but I like the variation that it gave. So if you see one of these jewelry boxes when you're out thrifting, grab it and give this technique a try. All right, next we're gonna update this old vase. It has a nice pattern, but I don't really care for the color, and the handle had been previously broken and fixed. So luckily I picked it up for $7.99 and it had an additional 50% off, so that was a really great deal. But we're going to add some texture to this using my homemade sand paint. If you have not painted with sand paint before, you need to give this a try. The texture is fabulous. I had this old tester that's almost like a cement color and some sand, and we're going to mix it all together. So I'm just incorporating it all together, and then I'm just going to paint my entire vase. This adheres really well to any surface because the base of it is chalk paint, so you don't need to worry about it chipping or peeling off. Revamping thrift store finds that don't match your home decor is such a breeze with maybe just even a simple coat of paint or a color change. And it's amazing how you can give them a fresh new look and take something that's really dated and vintage looking into something that looks modern and fits your home decor better. As you can see, this homemade sand paint is already turning this vase into a beautiful piece that's not dated anymore. While we're waiting for that to dry, I picked up this candle for $1.99, and again, it was 50% off, and I have some of this paint left over, so I'm just going to paint it the same color that we did the vase. First coat's on, I'm going to set this aside and let it dry. To speed up the painting process, a heat gun on low setting can come in handy for drying the paint quickly before you add the second coat. As for the second coat of sand paint, I prefer to dab it on to create more texture, either by pouncing the brush or using a sponge. And now that the first coat on the vase is dry, I'll apply the second coat by pouncing that sand paint onto it. I stumbled upon the paint I used in this project in the Oops section at Home Depot. That's a great place to scout for affordable paint deals. It's always worth checking out. I sealed both of these projects with some spray polyacrylic sealer. And check out these transformations. They no longer look dated, and they have more of a modern look that blends perfectly with my home decor. And best of all, I was able to accomplish this on a budget. This one is a really special project. I found this vintage light fixture without a base, and I decided to turn it into a table lamp. Luckily, I found a base that had a light already in it, and that globe fit perfectly on top. I just needed to find a way to make that light fixture sit on that base and not fall off and be a little bit permanent, but be able to still remove it if I needed to change the bulb. I was trying to figure out how to make it work, and I came up with the idea of using double-sided tape to hold that light fixture in place. I think it should work well enough because it's pretty secure even though it won't be permanent. I often come across these light fixtures at the thrift store, and I'm always drawn to them because I love to upcycle them. I recently found another one, and I turned it into a planter that I put a pothos in, and it's absolutely gorgeous. This is just double-sided tape that I found at the dollar store, and this is what it was like all put together. It's secure. I have that light bulb underneath, and I can turn it on, and it's going to be perfect right here in my little corner to light it up, and it gives little beams of light off of it when I turn it on in the dark. So I'm sure after you've watched this video and you go to the thrift store for your next trip, you're going to head right to the light fixtures and see if you can find something like this and recreate it. I'm guaranteed you'll look for something like that. I found this sprig of greenery also at the thrift store, but it had these cheap looking white flowers on it. Took them all off. It looked way better after they were done, but I still wanted to elevate it. So I got some of my white acrylic paint and I dry brushed the leaves, and it just kind of made them look more expensive and high end. I also found this handmade pottery vase that's just gorgeous, $3.49. So I added that sprig of greenery into it. That little bit of dusting of white acrylic paint on it made it look so it's not so faux, and it looked perfect on my little end table. I fell in love with this pot as soon as I saw it. Handmade pottery. I seem to be drawn to all of these pottery pieces at the thrift store lately, and I am going to make a macrame hanger for this pot. After measuring out how much of the twine I needed, this twine I actually bought at the dollar store too, I've put it all together to make 3 strands. Now the wooden rings, if you are in the thrift store, have a look on the wall where they have all the little bags put together, because I found a full bag of these wooden rings. I think there might have been 12 in the bag for like $3.99, and I have been making macrame hangers with these for quite a while. I'm adding a piece at the top to secure that wooden ring on, trimming off the edges, and then we're going to do a little bit of macrame. But I'm just doing a couple really basic knots to put this together. Shopping secondhand before buying new is such a smart choice for several reasons. First and foremost, it's a great way to find unique items that you won't see in everyone else's home. You can discover vintage clothing, one-of-a-kind pieces, and even high-end designer items at a fraction of the cost. And secondhand shopping is also an eco-friendly option, as it helps reduce the amount of waste that ends up in our landfills. By purchasing items that have already been produced, you're preventing new resources from being used and reducing the demand for new items. Additionally, many secondhand shops donate a portion of their profits to charitable causes, so you're supporting a good cause when you shop secondhand. Okay, I've got my hanger almost finished. I'm just going to tie it now through those 3 holes that were already made in that ceramic pot to secure it really well. And then after I have them all tied, I'm going to gather it at the bottom of the pot and make a tassel. Despite all of my DIY experience, there's one thing that I've never tried before, and that's making pottery. It's been on my bucket list for a while now, and I'm really looking forward in the near future to take a pottery class and finally create some beautiful homemade pottery pieces of my own. I'm thrilled to finally hang this in our log home and put a little plant inside. It looks beautiful hanging in the window, and it just adds a little bit of greenery and nature to our space. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and check out either of these next 2.